So we're here to talk through this Arrow Sudoku by Swaroop. One of the things, given this house theme, you can see the door and the roof and the side of the house and all these things, is there are some pretty compact rows. Like this row of all these arrows has two arrow sums and then an empty cell, so big digits are probably there. Also, like this eighth row has a big sum and another sort of small space, so like this 9 may go here, but probably a 7 has to be in a similarly large space just as a consequence. So how to go about starting this? In a few ways, you can always look at sets of values. Particularly, I look for very large, very small values. I see, for instance, an 8 is in one of those two cells, just looking across the values given the grid. And the place that's drawing my attention is seeing this 1, 3 and this 2, 3 in these spaces that have multiple arrows, particularly this space that actually has two two-cell arrows that need to have sums. And if 2 and 3 are already used, then one of these arrow sums will take the single digit 1 that's remaining, and the other arrow has to start from 4 as its lowest value, and 5 would be its next smallest value. So 4 and 5 is 9. So one of these arrows, and it has to be this one, is 4 and 5 to get a sum of 9. It can't be this top arrow because 9 is already in this box. And 1 is in one of the top two cells as I just marked. We can see that the remaining digits in the space, it looks like 8 is going to be in this column. It can be the sum and be 8 with 1 and 7, or it can be down here where this is 7, 1, and 6. But 6 isn't going to be in that sum circle, so this is a 7 or an 8. Can mark in this way. We can see, looking again using some of the small values, that over in this leftmost box in the middle, the 1 is going to be in the top arrow, and it's probably worth trying to think about this whole space and how we complete all these sums. So let's start by thinking about the 8. The 8 can't be in one of these cells because 8 and 1 wouldn't work with the 1 already there. So the 8 is here, and an 8 moves up to the top. We can ask, where does the 7 go? We can ask some other questions. I think a particularly useful one will be to think about the actual value that these sums will take. And let's start with the fact, like this 9 will come down here. I'm actually seeing there's something going on in the center that's really key, and I think it's doing a deduction that there are digits that this value can't take. We saw that the 8 can't go here because of the 1. The other digit that can't go in here is a 6 because the 3, which would partner, is already there. So it actually looks like putting in this 6, which then puts a 6 up here, is pretty key. Once we know a 6 is in this cell, this sum has to be larger than 6, and it can't be 7 or 8, so it must be 9. So that's a pretty quick deduction, which gives us 6 and 3 in this space. This 3 comes across and is one of these cells, but it couldn't be here because 1 plus 1 plus 1 would have a whole set of issues. So 3 is in this leftmost cell. Get a 3 note up top, like so. We can now come back and still think about the sums here. This 2 is now forced to be up top, so this will be 2 with 7, and this will be 1 with 4, and 5 left over, and that makes 7, 9, 7, 9 the options here. So that looks like a pretty productive set of things to place into the grid. We now still have to find a spot for progress, and one of the things I think that stands out in this puzzle is almost every small space you find progress takes a little bit of time to find the next space. I think this middle box looks pretty suspect, and the reason I say that is it's got just 2 more small candidates to put into it, 4 and 5. They can't both be in this column, but let's even look at where the 4 could go. It can't go into this cell because 1 and 3 are already there. And actually, let's look at the sum. Actually, it could a 5 be here? If a 5 were here, recognizing the 4 is going to be up top, we now have this cell here, which can't be a 4, and it can't be a 1, 2, or 3, and it's going to be larger than the 5. And so 4 and 5 are in some of these cells, but the sum of this arrow is only possible to be 8 because the other available digits instantly break that sum. And thinking again with our 4, 5 hat on, 4 can't go here because 4 plus 4 is no good. 5 can't go here because 5 and 3 has this elimination. And so I think there was just based on forced eliminations a requirement in the center column to enter these values this way. That gives us this set of spaces. It actually now puts the 7, 7 here. And it looks like it even, with the 6 not in the cell and the 6 not in that cell, puts the 6, 6 here. So this is a single. It's the only place the 1 can go here, and we've got a 3 with a 4, 5 as options. And 1, 2, 3. This is 4 or more. So that's pretty limiting. What it actually suggests, looking now down below, is that if any of these cells were 4 or 5, this then is going to have to also be 4 or more. And so if this were 4, this would be 5. This were 5, this could be 4. But both of those make this sum be 9. With one more digit, it's going to have to come up to 10. And so the fact that the smallest value I can put in this cell is a 3 is forced at this moment in the puzzle. And we have, again, the cell being 4 or 5 looks to be an important requirement in the grid. If this is 4 or 5, we've got a partial sum of 7 or 8. This will have to be a single value 1. And with the requirement that this be a 9 or 7, the only way we can make this work is 9 here, 5 here. Finishes out this space. This becomes a 7. And the 7 will put a 4 to finish the sum. That will move these values over. The 1 is in those cells. The 4 is over like this, just putting in some notes from what we see. This arrow is now going to be pretty limited for a set of reasons. The first is all the small digits 1, 3, 4 are taken, so a sum will always have a value 4 or less, so a 2 is in this cell. You can then also apply that over here, that the 1 that's remaining in the space has to be in one of those cells, or we're going to have an imbalanced sum. This value can then look to be almost, there's only one real option for it, so let's just sort of come upwards. It's not going to be a 5, it's not going to be a 6, because 6, 4, 2 has another 4, it's not going to be a 7, it's not going to be an 8. It's got to be a 9, which puts the 7 in the cell right to the right of it. The remaining digits here are 8, 5, and 6. And that's going to get us this pretty quickly. This 6 comes over, so 6 and 1 gives us a total sum of 7 in this cell. We can probably jump up here and think about the 7 sum pretty quickly, because a 7 can be 1 and 6, but the 6 is gone. It can be in 3 or 4, but the 3 is gone. The only option left is 2 of 5, so let's just put that one option in, given the 2 over here. This is forcing a set of these cancellations. These 2 4s put a 4 up top. That looks like that's also going to be pretty limiting when we get to thinking about what value can go in the cell. What I'm seeing is it's got to be no larger than a 6. If it were a 6, that's a 2, so it could be a 5 with a 1, and there's no other option for it. So we get that 5, this 1, 1, 9, 9 here, left over in the space of the 6. There's a 2 and a 3, and a 3 and a 6, so we're making good headway. Let's come back to the top. It looks like here we've placed a 6, 6, so we're going to eliminate the last spot that 6 can go is right here, so this is 8 and 1 and 7 is that big sum. 2 8s coming across. I'm going to put an 8 in this space. These 2 4s coming across. Put a 4 here. We've got 3 7 left in this column. 7 below, 3 above. That puts in a 5 to finish the arrow sum. Puts in this 1. The 5 comes down here to do a 5 6 pair. We're going to have 6 and 9, and we need to get a 2 in here, and the 2's forced in that corner cell based on the 2 2's in the grid. 6 and 6 over here, 2 and 3. Last digits in the puzzle will be a 7 and a 1. It looks like we've got our way around this Arrow Sudoku house. So sort of a puzzle that has some stops and starts, but was always keying into some key rows. The center sections, particularly this fourth row, were a place to start, but it looked like having this 1 and 3 eliminate where an 8 could go and where a 6 could go got some start. Figuring out this arrow had a limited option that required a total sum of 8, and given that only allowed a 6 and not a 4 or 5 in it, got us down here, and then looked like this bent arrow with particularly small digits here once we worked through those columns were key steps along the solving path. So hope you got a sense of how to think through Arrow Sudoku and track partial sums maybe and speculate on a few things to find out the next edges of progress. We'll see you again soon.